Now recording.
Hi, and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I am your host, Merlin. Today we'll be talking about Sasquatch, Bigfoot, tree knocker, and the reality thereof. We'll find out. Oh, yeah. So, sorry guys. I was my head's a little racy right now because I was making sure my puppy's not peeing on the carpet. But yeah. So today we're going to talk about Sasquatch, and right now we have an open discussion going on. How about Sir Paulie? You seem to know a good amount about Sasquatch and their connection with Les Strauss. Could you kick us off for us?
Just give us a backstory on what Bigfoot, Yeti, Sasquatch is.
Supposedly a large bipedal mammal, we're assuming, right? They all over, like, all the remote areas of the world, even down as far as Florida. People have said that they've seen these things walking through the bush and whatnot. There's a lot of tales going through certain cultures, even with my Native American culture, like talking about Bigfoot, whatnot. And it's an interesting subject.
Yeah, most definitely is. I mean, I know a little bit about Les Strauss. For anybody who doesn't know, he's known for his TV series Survivor Man. And if there's anybody in the world who would have experience with Sasquatch, it would probably be the person who spends most of their time out in the wilderness surviving and stuff. Now, I mean, it's been a few years since I've seen anything on Les Strauss and Bigfoot, but it's pretty interesting. You see these types of structures throughout the forest of where their territories are at, and it's like these teepee structures that are too big for men to create. You know, unless you're like an 8 or 9 foot person, and where the bend marks are and stuff, and it's proposed that these are territorial markers. Now, I guess I'll ask you. We have our special guest. Sorry, we started a little prematurely without you, surprise. We were just so excited to talk about Sasquatch. So we're glad that you here to
No worries.
grace your presence. So could you, Sir Paulie kicked us off. He told us a little bit about what a Sasquatch is. But why don't you give us your opinion, Surprise?
I mean, the Cliff Notes, it's a large, almost universally. In Indonesia, it's deemed as smaller. And that's one of the things. It's got names all over the world, but within a certain geography that kind of makes sense. But basically, it's a large, upright primate, essentially, hair covered, varying degrees of man-like. But a bipedal ape of some sort.
So can you elaborate for us the connection with Sasquatch and Native Americans, maybe specifically more in Canada?
Well, I mean, there's definitely that connection. There is a host of names. They all have, like, I'm not a Native American, I'm not even Canadian. I am an American, though. And from coast to coast, really especially Western Canada, but in the United States, from coast to coast, there is some sort of native tradition going back really centuries. I mean, they found ape-like carvings where it's like, how would they know what a monkey is in a riverbed in Oregon? Like I said, there's all these names. Now, the relationship between them is going to vary by tribe. Some of them see him as like a boss of the woods. In fact, one American tribe, whose name escapes me, should have studied up for this. They call him Oma, which just means boss of the woods. Others see them as they have names for him that vary, some variation of cannibal or monster. Others see them as like the big brother. Others see them as, um, the one who runs and hides is another one, a famous one. I forgot. That's a tribe in Washington that calls it that. I forgot the Indian translation of that, but the one that runs and hides. There's Otter Woman. So that it just varies. It's either from it's all of them see it as something that's real. They see it as a real animal. It's because they distinguish between spirits and what. But they always slot whatever their name for this thing with eagles, otters, wolves. So like none of them had any doubt as to what it's to how real it was, and they all basically have some variation of you don't mess with. It's either like a fear or like a respect, but it's kind of like okay, that's their valley, we stay over here, and that's that.
Yeah, see, that's the interesting part, like when these Native Americans, and it's much like with dragons around the world as well. But, for the animals that they revered or worshiped, I'm not too sure about their culture, but, they have the eagle, the bear, stuff like that, so iconic animals that are associated with the Native Americans. But they also have the Sasquatch at the top, like you're saying, the boss of the woods, and so it brings credence. Like there's no other mythological creature, right? There's no griffins, or even dragons, or like weird other things that have just been created out of nowhere. They're all animals based in reality. So why wouldn't there also be I guess a Sasquatch as well? Now, now, I guess I'm not too sure where most of these sightings come from. I'm guessing they come from Canada. Les Strauss is probably one of the more prominent guys. But Jane Goodall also talks about Sasquatch. Could you elaborate a little bit more on her perspective?
I'm not too familiar with her perspective because, as far as I know, and this is kind of what I will say, I'm a skeptic. At the end of the day, I will need a body, but this is one of those things where I can easily put myself in a believer's headspace and kind of argue it because it is like compelling. When it comes to Jane Goodall and the work that she did with gorillas, there are some similarities. There are some primatological behaviors that these things do that she said, oh, well, from my studies of gorilla, that's kind of what I recognize. But there's nothing like this in Europe. There's nothing like this in the Middle East. There's nothing like this in Africa. There are some inklings of it in South America. There's the Sisamite of the Maya legend. There's the Ucumar and the Cone, like Argentina, Paraguay, Chile, and all that. There's the Didi and Suriname, but that's like it's not as widespread as it is in North America, East Asia, Southeast Asia, Northern Australia. So I think her contribution to it was more like pointing out that, like, okay, well, if people are seeing a primate, that's something that checks out from what I know about great apes, from my studies, my being her, from her studies of, gorillas, which is just added credence because, if someone said, yeah, I saw it and it was like blowing fire out of its ass and it had pink hair, then it's like, yeah, that's not really, we can't place that with anything. But as far as like
Yeah,
in
that's
Africa or anything that she would see, there's nothing really like it. What really it seems to be something that tracks with what you would expect of forest habitats on either side of the Bering Land. So not every culture has this. Every culture has like a wild man story, but not every culture has like a Sasquatch thing. It's like a giant arc around the Pacific Ocean and then spreading out from there, but not too far.
now, yeah. So these countries that you're listing off, I mean, most of them are mountainous regions and stuff like that. I was going to ask, is this now, do these Sasquatch, they probably, change in look, obviously, like, the Yeti, for instance. But do they all carry the same kind of characteristics? Like you said that the Native Americans, call them tree knocker, or like the boss of the woods, I know that they're known for aggressive behavior, hooting and rock throwing and stuff like that, but nothing like I guess aggressive is wrong. I guess more like I guess they're trying to show their their ground or whatever. But I guess my question is, are these characteristics are they the same throughout all these cultures? Is it like a benevolent kind of like forest walker, or like
Uh,
do other cultures
it's
consider them like meat human eaters and stuff?
it's pretty much the same throughout. The ones in North America tend to be reported as larger, but you get pretty much the same thing. I mean, the rock apes in Vietnam, the orang pangolin in uh, Indonesia, the yowie in Australia, the Yei Ren in China, the I forgot the one in India. Um, fuck, I think it's the Mande Barung or Mand Barung or something like that. All the Almast in Eastern Russia, or Almasti, I've heard it said both ways. It's all pretty similar. It's something that avoids humans if it can, but you also don't want to fuck with it at the same time. It's like that mix. It's like, oh, they'll leave you alone if
Yeah.
you leave them alone. And that varies, of course, because some of them it's like, oh, they eat people, or they steal our women, or they come into our camps and they steal our food. So none of them have them like cuddly. Like, there's no stories of like, oh yeah, these things like we traded with them in the past. It's all like they're creepy thing, but they're all pretty much described basically the same. Like I said, they're bigger in North America, but that's about it. Like same colors, even the Yeti that has like a reputation for being white, but if you actually talk to Tibetans, they don't describe it as white. They describe it as brown or reddish brown, just like everywhere else in the world. So yeah, it's remarkably consistent. That's the strange thing about it. Like nobody's really deviating on it throughout all those centuries and over that kind of vast space.
And you mentioned that they're creepy, right? I mean, they are creepy. They got these huge, hairy, like Henry from that one TV show, Henry and the Hendersons. But no, actually, that I actually like that show a lot. But it's just reminding me of a conversation that I had with my brother a few years back after we freaking. Sorry, my brother's distracting me with his out speaker out loud while I'm streaming. Uh, but anyways, if you take into consideration the size of these beasts, and you take a look at the footprints, and you know what they say about big feet, right? Big brains. So but but think about it, right? You've got this 9 foot human hominid that essentially we don't know what the skull ratio is, or the jaw size and stuff like that. It's all speculation. But we're talking about a gigantic humanoid creature that all of its life is essentially just lived in the woods. Its intelligence is made for complete stealth. Think of a creature just as intelligent as a human being, but instead of focusing on math and science like that, they focused on the art of stealth or something. So for me, that like it's speculation, but to think about a creature that is as intelligent as a human, and has spent it's thousands of years out in the woods. It doesn't go beyond me to think that there would be such a creature that would be so precautious to track its steps, or make, I mean, or I don't know what it does. It doesn't cover its tracks or whatever. But you don't see their corpses, you don't see fecal matter, stuff like that. And it's kind of like um, you know Marines or troops when they're out in the field, right? We got wag bags, and it's just this trash bag that you carry with you everywhere you go, because you don't want your enemy to know where you're at. You can't just shit in a hole and leave your shit there. A dog can find it. So I mean, like, I know there's been evidence, and I guess that's what my next question is going to be to you. Is What evidence have you seen that has been the most convincing?
Well, to me, it's just the sheer number of sightings and just over the sheer length of time. And everybody's saying the same thing, but you could say that about dragons, but it's very consistent. I mean, dragons are kind of like, now that everybody's culture's melded So it's kind of like what the idea of a dragon is. People kind of compare notes, but it's like no one's compared notes on this. And just the thousands of sightings. Like I was looking up, Pennsylvania alone has like 1,300 odd sightings since the 50s. Washington has like over 3,000. It's like everybody's saying the same thing. They're describing the same habitat. They're describing the same, um, behaviors. And they've been doing it for years. I mean, even the Vikings there's only one from them that I'm aware of, described hairy giants when they landed in Newfoundland. So it's just, to me, that's the main thing more than any like hair or, the footprints, which are, it's the footprints are interesting because, you know, your foot is a dynamic body part. There are bones in it. It moves in a certain way. And the people that know what they're looking for can tell if a foot stepped in it or you just got like a rigid piece of wood stepped in it. Like it's going to leave a different kind of mark that they're going to look for. And everyone who's looked into it has said, yeah, these are real footprints. They don't say this is Sasquatch. They just say, yeah, something made this that we don't know what it is. So the footprints are like kind of interesting, but more than anything, it's just the length of time, the consistency of geography, where it's like, yeah, that it happens in certain areas and everyone's describing the same thing it's the one thing that gives me the most pause.
Yeah,
Like it's not a local legend, it's not it's not universal to where it's like, okay, well, this is just something that maybe we encountered like way back when it just kind of got imprinted on human memory and like got distorted and now everyone thinks this, and it's not a local legend. Like this is a terrible example because this turned out to be real, but like the Kraken, that was strictly with the Vikings. It's in very specific areas, but then it's consistent within.
Yeah, but yet the Kraken has, well, almost all been proven to be real,
Yeah.
right? Giant squid octopus. And so, I mean, another question that I have is like, I mean, given how much credence Bigfoot would bring to the scientific or secular scientific community, to I guess the idea of evolution, like, and with also the testimonies of Jane Goodall. I mean, just academically renowned for her work in primatology. And Les Strauss, I mean, I think he might have been in a scandal, like they caught him in a hotel room instead of at, when he was filming. But that might have been the other guy. I don't
I
know.
think that's
But,
Bear
but
Grylls.
regardless. Oh, Bear Grylls. Oh, screw that guy. That guy just like I love that. I love he's like, I'm gonna go like like Les Strauss when he like pees on clothing to keep cool. He does it because he has to, right? But Bear Grylls, he just does it because he has a camera crew there and stuff like that. I don't know if you ever watched his Netflix survival,
I have.
adventure one. Oh, that was a lot of fun because I realized that I died a lot. I was like, oh man, I died. Anyways, he does all these things like he's peeing and eating these bugs willingly, whereas Les Strauss is out there doing these things for real. And so we've got Jane Goodall, we've got Les Strauss, and we've got a huge push secularly to prove evolution, and yet there is and to my knowledge and to the public's knowledge, no public research going into this. It's just washed off as like some hogwash of an idea, and like or like a conspiracy theory, like, and it doesn't seem like why even should it be a conspiracy? I mean, I guess like
Well,
Can I
chupacabra,
ask a question?
it's even in
Can
the
I ask
name.
you guys a question?
please.
Um, I'm fairly certain that most of the people here are aware of missing 411 with David Paulides. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think it's related or is that not related?
I would say some of them are. I know he's all over the place. Like he tries to appeal to the Sasquatch people, the UFO people, the portal people. So he doesn't like nail it down. I think a lot of them is just people getting lost. But there are some of the stories where it's just like, yeah, that's weird. And if these things exist, they're a very good candidate for why that old man or that little boy just fucking upped and vanished.
Right. Yeah. No, it is pretty strange. Um, because the more I research it personally, I don't even know why I'm chiming in right now, to be honest. But like I'm thinking it's less but Bigfoot related. Even though when I first researched missing 411, I thought it was completely Sasquatch related. You know. And now I'm kind of like, nah, no. What do you
Yeah,
guys
they
think?
don't all. Everyone, because I've been down the Bigfoot rabbit hole, and there are people that want to like make it all like that, but for me, a lot of it is just regular people getting lost. I mean, there's the alien angle, but that's a whole different subject and different event.
Yeah.
But there's
I
like
get,
there's like a dozen, maybe 2 dozen, where you're just like, huh, that's interesting.
I wanted
Especially
okay.
to
when the,
add.
And
the
that
FBI and like armed men who won't say where they're from show up on the search. Where it's like, okay, well, you're hunting something. What do you know? The government thinks something's out there. That
boom.
doesn't mean
Yeah.
it is.
Hell yeah. Hunting something.
But
Yeah.
anytime that happens, you're just like, that could be a bear, but bears aren't that sneaky. They leave a lot more evidence. I mean, you kind of know. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Some of them are very weird.
Okay. Yeah. And I know that might be like it might even not be related to like the Sasquatch conversation. But I mean, okay, so let's my second question, if you guys don't mind, would be just like I've heard a lot of these Sasquatch stories. I've been researching it for years, and about this like whistling and like people getting rocks and acorns thrown at them. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, that's classic primate behavior. That's something chimps do. That's something like bonobos. Like it's not like there's a difference between monkeys and apes, of course. It's very much ape behavior. I'm not aware if any monkeys do
How
it.
do okay? Sorry, someone was speaking.
I was just gonna say, heck, that's something that I would do, right? If I was some freaking hairy guy living in the woods and
You
I
are
saw
hairy.
some like people, like everywhere except where it counts on my head. But like freaking, I guess Sasquatch is like the original forest troll. Like he's just going around throwing acorns at people and scaring the crap out of, like maybe I like to think of, the altruistic side of things. So I'm thinking of him more of like a benevolent creature. But like, I mean, there might be some credence to missing persons. I wouldn't see why they would do such a thing. I don't know. Do the Native Americans have any type of legends? Like I know they have some legends about shapeshifters, and that was a discussion that was going on inside our voice chat on the Roundtable Discord server. Join us. But yeah. So, but no. Can you? Is there any like legends or about shapeshifters that turn into Sasquatch, maybe, or what if they're or do they eat or take I guess Native Americans or First Nations
Yeah, well,
people?
They do
there's
have a
lots of.
lot of.
I'm sure there is. Like, I'm not
They do have a
completely
lot of
educated
those.
on that, but yeah, there's lots of stuff about like don't go into certain areas and stuff like that. Like certain mountains you're not supposed to go close to and stuff.
Well, yeah, usually valleys is what the are the no-go areas. But yeah, there's dozens of tribes. So there's like 500 recognized Native American nations, and yeah, dozens of them do have those legends where like it's they will. There's one which is kind of like this is the more dubious one, but like apparently the Gnoskwa, which is like the woman of the woods or whatever, will come through and like collect women in the basket that she carries on her back. I mean, that sounds like more like a you know bedtime story. These things weaving baskets and just tossing kids in. But they also feel like Gnosk was real, and that's just like one part of their folklore with regard to that creature.
Now, what is surprise? What is your opinion on like I don't know if it's airing anymore, but those Bigfoot shows like on History Channel and stuff like that? Do you think that they help, or do you think that they're just kind of hurting the whole like image of or the legitimacy of Bigfoot?
I mean, if I was like in the Bigfoot community, as like an outsider, I would have to say they are entirely. Like, you can't go out with like strobe lights and just a bunch of yodeling dipshits whacking on trees with crowbars and expect one of these things to just walk up. I mean, if they're real and one did, what are you
Totally.
gonna do? Like, what
I
are you,
agree.
what then? Like, you're courting like if they are what you think they are, then like it's a dumb strategy anyway to try to find any elusive creature. I mean, if it was 1903 and gorillas weren't discovered yet, that is not how you would go. And gorillas were cryptids at one time. That's not how you'd go find gorillas. That's not how we found the
No
Billy
way.
ape. That's not how we found the okapi. It's idiotic. And then also it's like, what if that works? Like, what now? Because none of these fuckers have guns. Yeah, it's theater. I mean, it's
So it's just entertainment, basically.
yeah.
Surprise, would you agree or disagree with this? That it's kind of, it might not really go together, but I'm going to try to make it. In Jersey, we have the Jersey Devil, which is a huge thing. And it seems that in all different parts of the world, there's always this mysterious creature that everybody talks about. Would you say that's inherently true for almost every part of the world? And do you think it all could be related to one another?
Well, no, that's the thing about this, and this is why I can get, despite being a sympathetic skeptic, this is why I can get into the believer's headspaces because it's not all over the world. There, you don't find anything like this in Europe. You don't find anything like this in Africa. There's nothing like this in the Middle East. There's, really, I mean, it's in a basically on either side of the Bering Land Bridge. So it's not like, again, pretty much everywhere you go, there's little evidence for them in South America, even though I outlined 3 possible creatures that have been named by natives and are part of their folklore that kind of track with this. So it's actually not something that you see everywhere, which is what's interesting. It's basically the Pacific Rim, and then in
Which also
forests on
leads
either side.
credence. Oh, I don't mean to cut you off.
I'm sorry, ET, but you have to remember when one person is speaking and they have the mic, and when there's a gap, you can speak. Please don't interrupt.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Like, there's nothing in Japan. There's no, even the native Ainu people don't have anything like this. Should make sense. I mean, what's swimming 100 miles? It's pretty much, and we know sea levels were lower, so Indonesia and Northern Australia kind of makes sense because at one time that was actually all connected. But yeah, it's not a universal phenomenon. And every attempt I've seen to like try to say, oh, well, we found here's a picture of one of these things in Germany. It's just like, yeah, no, no. It's not the same. It's not the same consistency. It's not ubiquitous among native peoples. And then like reported again by Europeans coming in, and then staying reported by those Europeans. Not that Europeans like that makes it true. I'm just saying you have 2 corroborating populations that aren't culturally connected over centuries reporting the same thing. That exists, but it only exists in certain areas. It's not ubiquitous.
Do you think at some point, how in medieval times they talked about dragons, and in Asia they talked about Godzilla? Do you think at some point Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, all these creatures will become like a part of history, and new ones will come about?
No, I don't. I mean, I would be surprised if that was the case. I mean, we do know that we share the planet with other upright hominids, and the family tree is only getting bigger as more and more information comes out. Personally, pet theory, nothing to substantiate this, but I think that's where legends of trolls and ogres came from. It's just kind of like a garbled like wisp of a memory of the time where we weren't the only members of the genus Homo walking around. It's kind of like, oh yeah, there's this other thing you don't want to mess with. But this thing is it's very specific. I mean, it's man-sized or larger. It's hairy, and it acts. It's smart, but it still acts very animalistic. They don't build villages. No one's ever walked up on a campfire and saw one of these things like roasting a rabbit around it. They're very much animalistic, like Merlin said, very stealthy, but then upright like us, which is disconcerting, and apparently smarter than anything except us. But no, I don't think it's going to enter because I mean, who thinks about it? Like people in the countries that these things, if they were to exist, are supposed to exist, don't think about it. I mean, it's a joke. So it's never going to enter like the folklore of like England or Iran. These are very organic tales to where they're seen.
Is there a possibility this could be? I have a strong belief that the government, as in religion, there's always a higher power, and I relate this kind of stuff to the one I think it was Marvel or DC movie where they released these monsters to combat something. Do you think that these creatures are something that come out, the government releases every once in a while to kind of keep it going, or do you think it could be somewhat government related or something along those lines?
No, because it's been happening too long. I mean, it's like you have cave paintings in the Southwest of things that look like and are described, but when you ask the natives, like, hey, what's that? It's like, oh, that's the boss of the woods. That's Sasquatch. And it's like, it's the same thing. And it's like next to like a coyote, next to a human. So it's like, and the U.S. wasn't even a thing back then. In fact, there were no white people on the continent back then. So it's like, this predates any government. These things go back. Even like if we were to go somewhere else, like, do you think the Yowie is like the Australian government's creation, like, like super soldier, whatever? It's like, well, no, because the Aborigines have reported that for, 40,000 years or however long they've been there. Same with Indonesia, with their orang pendek, the rock apes in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia. So if they exist, I'm sure the government knows about it, but they're not. They can't be a creature of the government because the tales of them go back so much further than both the U.S. government and the capacity to genetically engineer anything.
How
Does
could
the
we
government
find
have?
more information on the government related to this subject?
Well, what I was going to say, Price, is to go along with that is, do you think the government controls these creatures? Like they can capture them, return them, and release them back in, kind of thing?
I would be very skeptical of that. I don't know how amenable something like this would be to capture. I mean, you can trank one, I guess. Again, assuming they're real, you could trank it. But I mean, if it's what everyone's saying it is, and you've got like a 9.5 foot tall, concern, like if we're just going by gorillas, 15 times stronger than a man, you're not. I don't see that. It's not going to be anyone's pet. I'll put it that way. No matter, even the U.S. governments, you can kill it, dissect it, study it, or you could corral it in like a preserve, but you're not like keeping it in a deep underground military base and then kind of like letting it go and then somehow calling it back in. And I don't see that as a probability and maybe not even a possibility.
Well, they should be treated with human rights, correct? As all animals should be.
Human rights, probably not. Again, if they're real, I don't know. I mean, just like basic conservation measures, absolutely. I mean, personally, I don't like apes. I don't like monkeys. I don't like any primate. So for me, it's a creepy thing. If I was out to find out it exists, my gut instinct is like, not very charitable. But yeah, I mean, you'd have to preserve them realistically if it ever came out that they exist.
Yeah, we can't treat them like garbage. We have to treat them like animals, like we do with any other animal, right?
Yeah,
If you even
yeah.
want to call them animal in the first place.
I mean, mankind is an animal.
Well, here's an interesting question, Surprise. Do you think is there? Maybe there's an actual answer to this, but is there like an in between an animal rights and human rights, between like animal and human? Is there like a hybrid or something that's like an in between, right in between that?
Uh, Maybe like a missing link.
I think that's
Like a,
evolution. That's the animal. That's the story of the animal throughout history. It's like the difference between the beginning and humans.
but would you say that if there was ever to be, if Bigfoot was to come out, let's say somebody found him, whatever, they're captured, would you say that there could be a group of people that are animal rights, human rights, but what would be in between? They should be treated as a person, but they should also be treated as an animal. Do you think that's a distinction that could happen, or do you think that's a distinction that, if
I think
it
it would
was to
have to
ever be?
be animal rights, just because. Um, I mean, human rights means human. So I mean, treating something as an animal doesn't mean not being compassionate. But I, I don't know if there'd be. I think you would just apply regular human rights to them. Hey, don't kill them. Stay out of their area. Um,
Make him
you
pay
wouldn't
tax?
like give them citizenship or anything like that.
Would you make him pay taxes?
Yeah, exactly. Like you can't make them pay taxes. Can't give them citizenship. The laws
But
of
most,
war wouldn't really
we
apply.
we can joke about that stuff, but most importantly, it means we don't have the right to harm them, or especially kill them, or do scientific testing on them.
Well, if this came out, you'd have to do it on one just to figure out what we
I
would
know
do.
we would, because we're sick like that. But who gives us the right to do that? Because these guys, supposedly, if they're as smart as you claim with their stealthy abilities and whatnot, who gives us the right to stick a bunch of needles in their arm and put a bunch of things on their head?
Yeah, I mean that's further down the line. I mean, if we ever got one, then that could be kind of.
Well, let's say
I
we
don't. I
did
don't
catch.
know.
Let's say we did catch one. You'd be getting it, and you locked it up, and it was living in your living room, like Henderson style. You'd be getting a knock on your door not too long after you tell your friends, and they would take it away. And then what's going to happen to that creature?
It
Oh,
goes on the
100%. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to keep it. Like if you did bring that in, Bureau of Land Management, local Forest Service, probably FBI. Like yeah, they'd come for it. You wouldn't be able to just keep that. I don't think you would be able to keep it anyway because I think I don't think they're from everything I've read in reports they're not amenable to capture anyway. Like Harry and the Hendersons is not what you would be dealing with. I mean, you would have. I mean, we're talking about not killing them, but you would need to be armed to the teeth if you're in a
Like
situation where one's in your
some kind
house.
of
That's
military
that's not
strength,
going to happen.
This
like a
goes along the
military
lines of
strength.
it goes on the long lines of I do a lot of mechanic work, and it's one of those things. Do uh, you take an old machine and you have no history of it, nothing? Do you take that machine apart and try to fix it, and not just fix it, but learn about it, research it, and see if you can find more and more parts that relate to it? Or do you just leave it be and let it sit in its current condition? Which is the same thing if you capture them. Do you leave them be, or do you research them? And it's one of those things you have to figure out. Do you research it, or do you just let it sit and don't touch it at all? And that's up for a big debate. I mean, that goes into into people hunting or people finding a new species. Well, do we go into the deep ocean, find this new species, take it up, and now it's dead? Or should we have just stayed down there and like looked at it, seen what was going on, instead of just trying to like research it, instead of just keep it in a central environment? It's either one or the other.
But a lot of the
You leave
things,
it
like
for-
anyone who's in conservation will tell you, you really can't understand your effect on a creature that you know nothing about. So it's not necessarily killing it and putting it on a slab necessarily, but failure to engage and then just kind of going on. Like if you go on like it's not there, then you're gonna go on like it's not there. And then 50 years later, oh, where'd they go? Oh, well, you know, this toxin is deadly to them and it wiped them out and there were 5 left. And you didn't know that because you didn't do anything. So it's like there is a certain amount of research you have to do when you encounter anything, just from just from not just the human knowledge aspect, but even from a conservation aspect.
That is so. I respect that opinion so much. I never even really thought about that, to be honest. Like, excuse my ignorance, but like, yeah, like, could this not be like an endangered species? Like, and to what level?
It's like if you only knew one species, this was the last like white tiger left on Earth. And it's like, oh my God, like that. I remember seeing something on the Weather Channel about this. I think it was a puma or something that they saw in Russia. Might have been a tiger that they saw in Russia, and it's like the first time they've seen it in like 30 years. Now, if you were to follow that animal, and you saw one 30 years ago, and you saw one now, do you track it and try to find it? But for all you know, that could be the last one, and now you just made a whole species go extinct. And it's like the hardest decision you can make in life is like, do you follow it or do you just let it be? Because for all you know, there could be 10,000, but you've only seen one.
Yeah, you know, that's actually a good point. Like, it reminds me of a large wild cat that was been found recently in Australia. I think it's like a tree cat or whatever. And you know, it's an unknown species from before. And you know, if you think of Australia, right, you think, well, most of it's not inhabited, but the area in which this cat was found is in the forest areas, and where most of the habitation of Australia goes. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that if it can go under the nose of millions of people who happen to live in Australia, or even closer to where there's actual scientists that study this kind of stuff. For a cat that could go hidden for so long from from people, it's not out of the realm of possibility that a big ass Sasquatch could go undetected, mostly undetected in the woods.
Well, yeah, unverified by science would be the. It's definitely been detected. Hold on.
Also, Surprise, can you fix your mic a little bit? You're just a little bit quiet. There's a little bit of static in your background.
Well, if he's fixing his mic, I guess I'll take this opportunity to, I guess, ask my next question, which is, do you think maybe possibly with that this Sasquatch, that they're actually intelligent creatures and they're just waiting for us to come to a more a more, I guess, better approach, more humanistic approach to them instead of just banging sticks in the night?
Well, I think if you now I could be in my head. There's two sides in my head. There's the crazy side that's like these creatures are really smart. They're watching us. They know what we're doing. Yada yada yada, which goes against everything I know and I was taught. But then there's the other side of me that says they're an animal. They are in the woods. They have no human contact, and most animals that see humans as they fear them. They see them as danger, and they run away. So going on with what you said, I'm not really sure, because if it's so hard for us to see them, then they see us and they try to get away as fast as possible. It's not like they're popping up and we're seeing them everywhere. Because if they weren't afraid of us, then they would give us subtle signs, but there's not really like subtle signs they're giving us. I mean, you can look at their shit, and you can look at their like food they eat or whatever, but we don't really have that much.
Yeah.
What about that whole gifting phenomena? Supposedly they gift.
You actually, hold on. I remember something like this. Could you elaborate more?
I mean, I'm not an expert by any means. Sir Price knows way more about this, but I mean, like, so lots of people have claimed that like they've been like gifted, quote unquote, but with like flowers and like objects and stuff. And I think it's I interpret that as some kind of form of communication, like as a form of a goodwill, or for lack of better word.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let me ask the room. Yeah, what do you? Okay, let's say Bigfoot decides to go walk into Canada into a general store, and he's just, everybody now knows he exists and stuff like that. How do you guys think that society will change, our views of ourselves, or maybe evolution would change if such a fact were to come to light?
You in your car?
I'm smoking on the balcony. I apologize, everybody, but my is killing me, and I had to smoke some weed and put my electrical pads on. So bear with the quality as I tote this bowl. But yeah, I mean, maybe the question was too obscure, or too, broad or whatever. But I guess, I'm just wondering whether or not if Bigfoot did come out and like science, mainstream science accepted it and everything, what would change in our lives? Would just prove evolution? Or would this? I just don't know.
I think it would change the paradigm of things to a degree in which most people wouldn't even know what to think. Like,
You think maybe it
like
would just like
seriously,
go under? You think
like
it's
this.
like, I mean, oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. You go on.
I mean, it doesn't have to be. Maybe I'm begging the question, but like, I guess it doesn't have to be. I mean, they could just be like that cat in Australia, right? Like, oh shit, we got another monkey walking around the woods. Okay, cool, evolution is real. So, like, I mean, it might not be that big of a deal at all, but I mean, I don't know. It's like, I just think that that's not a good enough excuse for secular science and maybe I guess amateur or journeyman primatologists to go out and seek more of the truth. I just think that there's too much evidence out there to be ignored, right? Like, who's going out into these woods, freaking making these big old structures? Who's throwing rocks and acorns? Who's gifting, right? It's not a bunch of creepy men in the woods. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just a bunch of hairy men walking through the woods. Who knows? But I don't know. I just feel like it's a great injustice to not investigate this further with integrity.
Yeah, I agree with that last part where you mentioned integrity, because I think that's probably the most important part of this investigation, because we don't understand what this is, and how dare we interfere with another species' livelihood? How would you like
Well,
it
I
if
mean,
someone interfered with yours?
it's kind of in the name, though, why it's so radioactive, why we call it Bigfoot. You're not going to get any funding for it because there was a guy, forgot his name. First off, it started strange. Like, it started like, and they're probably all dead now, so I'm gonna say to this day, but to the end, a lot of everyone on the crew thought something was going on because there was something that was coming into the camp or the construction site, like a logging camp, or they were building a new town out in the woods or something like that. Maybe it might have been a pipeline. I don't remember. But something was coming in, leaving huge footprints, throwing around, like not dragged, like picking up and throwing around 150-pound barrels, tipping over backhoes, all this stuff. And the foreman or the guy who was running the whole thing, like went out, carved some giant wooden feet that didn't even really look like the original that everyone was seeing at first, and kind of said, "Oh, this is I got him. This is me, guys." And the press nicknamed it Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's some
Hundreds of
interesting.
thousands of years, and over multiple landscapes. That is where it entered the consciousness, and that's what most people think it is. So if you're at Princeton or whatever, you're not getting funding to go and look for this thing. It's radioactive.
Sir Price, can you get your mic just a little bit closer to your face?
How's that?
You seem just a little bit quiet, and there's some static. So
Yeah, it's not my and
I also found it interesting. Maybe this is a little bit of a different subject, and let me know if you guys want to go back to what you had just said, sir. Those crazy howling sounds in the woods. I remember when I was a kid, I was watching those videos since like the early '90s. What's that? That's not a wolf or a cougar or anything.
it could be
yeah, the
stray dogs.
creepiest one. Everyone should. Well, not. I'm not gonna. But the creepiest one I've seen on YouTube was Saint. If you look up recording St. Louis County, Minnesota, I mean that one will make your hair stand up. Like regardless of, I mean, I don't think it's a hoax. I don't know what it is, but they're not wolves. In fact, I'll post it. Might as well just post it.
Bryce, are you watching the rec event right now? Like the
Is this? Am I getting any better?
Just a little bit. Maybe it's all the rain in the background. But I just
Yeah,
posted that link. I believe that's the right one.
you do have some distortion, I'll be honest.
Is that the right video I posted in general? Sir Price?
Yeah, let me post that video.
Oh, no, I think I just found it. So I just wanted to see if that was the right one.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let me look at
Is
it.
this getting posted in rec event or?
yeah,
I'll
it should
put
be in rec. It should
yeah,
be in
sorry.
rec. Girl.
Yeah, that's the one.
All right, it's in general.
Ooh, is it spooky? Should I listen to it right now?
Don't do it before you go to bed if you're easily scared. But
So
I
if
mean,
we're
it's
like
like
you,
it's 8 o'clock. So let me try
It's
to
like
fix
9
it.
minutes long. I'm gonna save it for later.
As far as as far as Bigfoot goes, the best evidence I've ever seen is that Patterson footage. You could basically consider it the most famous footage, and it's supposedly they say it's a guy in a suit, but it's not. The thing has huge tits, and the body structure is not right as to be a human, and it's quite remarkable. It's really incredible footage. I believe in Bigfoot.
It's incredible that you just brought that up because I was just about to bring that up. It's called the Patty footage or whatever. Yeah, yeah. What do you guys think about that? Cool, Captain Reality.
Nat
Yeah,
Geo did
I
a
am
thing on it that
also
was
inquisitive.
really interesting. Like
It looks
it's not
pretty
just like,
real to me.
well, and the biomechanics that they did on it. It's not because I mean, you get a man in a suit. There's a million videos of a dude in a suit, but the body mechanics just are not. They don't match up with what a human would be. The knees are lower, the elbows are higher. They tried. They got like the 6'6" guy. I was surprised National Geographic did it. Um, I'll try to find that too. That video, if someone else can find it before I do. like Trucker did with the recording. But it's they got some like 6'7" guy, and it's like, yeah, you can't walk like that.
Yeah, like, and I think
Craig
when
Bot
was
just
that? Was that
disconnected. So
the early '60s? I can't remember the year off the top of my head, but
Yeah, I think
1967.
that was from the '60s. That's the best footage of Bigfoot I've ever seen. That's like legit. I mean,
yeah,
I've
and
I've watched experts watch that, and experts in what? I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry, but they're anthropologists or whatever. They're experts in how primate experts. There you go. And many have said that that cannot be a human in a suit. I think it's pretty much slam dunk that Bigfoot is real. I
I
really
kind
do.
of agree. At least that footage, whatever it is, yeah. And two things too. Back in the day, I don't know who said that, but in the '66, I think I heard someone say mid to late '60s that was made. That was
67.
'67. Okay.
The original Bigfoot video.
Yeah, the Patterson footage.
Craig Bot disconnected.
Okay. But two things that I think about that, which have been brought up many times before, I'm sure. Number one, the fact that the way that when he turns around to look at the camera, his shoulders also turn. Yeah, that's pretty indicative of like an actual animal. You know, like if someone was in a suit, they probably wouldn't have even known to move their body that way. Number two, just to add breasts onto the bodysuit would have. I think that's pretty unlikely as well.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
So you have the
turning the
shoulder,
head,
you have the
like
turning,
if,
and then the breasts.
like it's not just like yeah, exactly. Because like if a human does it, our necks are long enough, and our trapezius muscles are separated enough to where you just turn your head. You turn your body to a certain extent, but if you're, you know, like a necklace, if you have basically like an ape's physiology, you can't do that. You turn your head, your shoulders are moving with you because you're sunken further down into your torso,
Yeah, and
which
what
is
do
an
you?
interesting detail that I'm not sure a couple of rednecks in '60s California would have.
Sir Price, real quick. Craig Bot has left. I'm gonna summon it back in. I have the first recording, but we're gonna get a second part of it, just so you know.
So,
Now recording.
so yeah, yeah, Prize. Also, like, who would have thought to even do that in the '60s? Like, at the time, they had no idea how big this would become in the further decades to come. You know what I mean?
And they also looked at and this is also in the Nat Geo video. I'm trying to find it. And basically, depending, because they had one of those variable lens cameras where you can switch to like 4mm, 7mm film, basically. And they went back, they studied it, and either that thing is, God, I'll have to find the video, but remember, I know the upper one. I don't remember the lower. It was either 3'8", like 3 feet 8 inches tall, or it was 7 feet 2 inches tall. Those were the only two options. And basically, because of what the 3'8" would mean for the size of like the trees and everything, the correct proportions had that thing at over 7 feet.
That's interesting. And then, in addition to what we're just discussing right now, the breasts on the animal, let's call it. Why would they have put that on a suit?
Yeah, that would be a strange addition.
You wouldn't do that if I was in a group with my friends and we were making some weird little monkey suit. We wouldn't do that. Like, it's in the '60s. Like, come on.
And you look at like Planet of the Apes that came out like 2 years later, and that's like a major Hollywood motion picture film, and Hollywood didn't really match that up. Wasn't that realistic? And it is interesting how every guy who claims to have been in the suit can't produce it. Trying to find this Nat Geo film. I don't want there'll be a lot of dead air. I'm just trying to look at, see if I can find this.
Do you guys ever hear about that whole supposed story about the Patterson film called the Bluff Creek Massacre? Where supposed there's this idea, and there's some weird videos on the internet I've been looking at recently about how they massacred a whole family of these Sasquatch creatures. Family. Have you guys heard about that? Like, do you know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yes.
what's the deal with
I
that?
have.
I don't know. I know very little about it. Can you explain to me what's going on there?
I honestly don't know much about it other than some guy who took some liberties when it came to film contrast and all that to show that, oh, this is blood. And, here's a dog print that you can see. It just all seemed very it seemed just another reason or another proof of why this isn't taken very seriously.
Maybe, yeah. It's also been so long now. It's like one of those things like we'll never know. Like kind of like Roswell. It's been so long now. It's like who the hell knows, you know? Just like lost in time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you just roll up and just a bunch of these and then just walk out of the woods. These things are what people are saying they are. I don't think you do that and not be a missing persons report.
Huh.
I don't think the
So do
lone
you think
survivor
these
just walks
things
away.
like do you think these things can be shot?
Oh yeah,
Like I don't
100%.
want to kill. I don't want to hurt anything. But I mean, like, can one be shot?
I don't see why not. I mean, I would say absolutely. It's a flesh and blood creature. You have a lot of people that think like, it's like a spirit or something, but no, like
Well, I mean, okay, now we're getting down to it. Let's really talk about this now. Let me take a sip of beer. Are these things coming in and out of portals, or are these things just apes that are super stealthy in the woods?
I would have to say that they're primates. I mean, because they're seen in the same places. They follow a natural habitat. People have back when
How
I like dove
how are
down
they
this
so?
rabbit hole, people have shot them. It's just that
How,
there's an interesting firing a bullet down range and then like dragging it out. Those are two very different things.
how are they so sneaky though? Because you'd think I know this argument has been brought up a million times. Like you'd think someone would have shot one by now.
Well, that's the thing. Like tens of thousands of reports in North America over hundreds of years. I mean, plenty of them have been shot.
But
There's just
we
not
don't
been that
have
many.
one body. I'm not arguing in one way or another. I'm just like amazed. I'm trying to figure it out, just like everyone else. Like
Oh
why?
yeah, yeah.
Why?
I mean, I don't.
Well,
I think it's a tall order.
I mean, I brought like it's like I guess that's like a appeal to common sense fallacy. But yeah, but it does make there's some credence to that, right? There's all these hunters running around in the woods. You would expect someone would have came across and just shot it just for the sake of shooting it, right? Because humans are humans. But I brought up the point earlier that these things. I mean, we don't know what the prospective skull size is or what their brain size is. But imagine a creature that's just as intelligent as a human, but for its entire social, its entire society or social basis is based around nocturnal, stealthy movements, right? Like there's like it's we've got tribes of humans, in the Amazon that do not want any contact with regular people. There's an island in the Indian Ocean where if you step foot on that island, they'll fucking kill you right away. But I'm just thinking, like, if there is a creature intelligent, or maybe even more intelligent, and like maybe there's like a stealth intelligence, right? Maybe they know how to move quietly. Maybe it's more hereditary, like they just naturally walk quiet, or they have maybe like rituals where they bury their dead, or dispose of their corpse in ways where there are very few remains and
What
stuff like
about
that, or maybe they take
what
care
about?
of
I
their
don't
own,
mean
and
to
when
cut. I don't mean to cut
have
you off. I
dogs
just want
young.
you to keep going. But what
But
about
yeah,
like just on that one point before I forget it? Corpse dogs, like police dogs, can sense corpses buried underground. I don't know about years, but like long time after they're buried.
it's true, but that's assuming if they bury their dead, right? I mean, they might eat their dead. They might,
They can detect them
they
underwater
might,
too, though. So you got
I don't know, leave
okay.
it
So
out.
they either have to eat them because they're not going underground and they're not going in a river without getting detected. Like where else are they going to go? Like they can't go up into the air, or can they?
But the thing is, you're not going to find very many
Familiar
live
with
of any type that died of natural causes. Very few hunters have come across a dead bear. Very few hunters have come across a dead, especially predators, but even deer. I mean, and those are way more. If these things exist, then there's going to be way more bear and whatever else. So they wouldn't. First off, you'd have to go looking for them, and who's going to do that? I mean, whether you're a coroner or a professor or anything, uh, your boss is going to be like, "What the fuck are you doing? You're looking for what? No, no. We're not using our dogs to go look for Bigfoot in like some valley in Montana. Like you're insane."
you know,
So even if you manage to do it, it's not. It's not, especially like in the Northwest, but like forests in general are not very good at preserving remains. When it comes to primates, we have very few fossils. Like Gigantopithecus blackie, we only know it, which is funny when people draw it, teeth and mandible to, other ratios that you know from the apes. So we know it was massive, but you can't really say anything other than that. And all we have is teeth and part of a jawbone. We found our first chimp fossil, I think, like in 2003, 2007, something like that. So forested, like any intelligent predator knows how to fuck off to where you're not going to find the body. And then in a forested environment, regardless of what you are, you're generally not going to. Otherwise, we'd be tripping over dead bears every time you got in the woods. But that's just not how that works.
yeah, it's very interesting. I was, because I was thinking about that the other day, because we've got, like, I was thinking about birds, because like we have a crap ton of birds everywhere, pigeons, crows, and stuff. But I mean, you don't really see one dead unless it's been killed, or or there's a death wish. I had a crow try to walk in front of my car the other day, freaking dumb crow. But yeah, so I don't know, that's a very interesting phenomenon. So like, I guess that does bring credence to the idea that we wouldn't really find remains. I guess remains are kind of a hard thing to find, but there have been remains that have been found, right? I mean, we have, just in the recorded event area, Sir Pauly, you posted, I hope you're there, this cone head shaped thingy with a human hand
I
that
saw
looks
that.
like
What
it's
was
next to
that?
it, and it's got red hair.
Oh, yeah, that's the
Which,
Yeti,
I don't
the
know, like,
alleged Yeti from Nepal. They said that that's its skull cap and then a
So
hand.
there's like some information backing up something behind it.
There isn't, because it's a religious relic and no one's allowed to do any tests on it. So it's kind of a dead end. because the monastery where it's held is not going to let anyone go in and decipher it one way or the other.
That's too bad.
Interesting about this is, first off, it's a skull cap that's in a cone shape and it's red hair, right? And so there's probably a connection with the Nephilim, or the redheaded giants that we see in humans, in our genome. I guess maybe they're more explained as Denisovans in modern anthropology. But Denisovans are probably more just the giant ones. But they're, Nephilim, that's just honestly a placeholder for the word that I don't know what to actually call them. That maybe actually Aryan in the true like historical thousands of years ago, like there was a race called the Aryans, blonde hair or red hair, blue eyes, cone shapes that we see, in human skeletons in Egypt, or also in South America and stuff like that. So I wonder if there is a correlation between, this ape-like creature and those. But this is purely speculation and and a reach. But I just can't help to draw the correlation between the cone shape and the red hair.
Well, and that's the thing about the Yeti, and it's pretty consistent. That's another thing, that every locale that reports these things, pretty much brown, black, reddish brown. So even the Yeti, I know in our popular culture, it's like Arctic, right? So the native
I
Tibetans
wonder.
say that it lives in the forest underneath the mountains, and it like traverses it.
It's freaking interesting. Something that I haven't been able to find in very much information about is that, like, think about the intelligent agencies, right? They know probably a lot more than most people. What do they know about this subject? That's what I think is crazy. Not to
Wait,
mention
what?
that, man. Oh, sorry.
You wonder who knows about it?
Just your average intelligence agencies. Um, you know a lot about many things, and as if there isn't some file in their computer system somewhere where they don't have a bunch of information about this. What would be on their computers, like, just to, let's just use our imagination. What would be on those computers, I wonder? Because yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't even begin to speculate on it. I feel like if it exists, someone there would know, but I also feel like it's not a very high priority. They probably kick that off to someone in some wildlife
Yeah, maybe. I
department.
don't know. It's so crazy. And, like, I don't mean to loop around back again because I don't necessarily think it's connected, but we talk about missing 411 with David Paulides. I think, well, he's shown in the videos, it's very well known that the national forest parks, they have, like, these, like, pieces of data, right? Which they are holding into their own little data suppositories, which take millions of dollars to supposedly access. So that's pretty weird.
It is weird. Everything's around Bigfoot is just inconsistent. He either is or isn't. And if he really is out there, or they're really out there, I would, my hat's off to them for I guess evading us for so long. But there seems to be more mounting evidence as the years go on, right? I mean, we've had the idea of Bigfoot, and video. Like for the longest time, it was just that one swinging arm, it was a fake picture, I guess, but next to the riverbed. And now we've got hooting evidence, like audio evidence, supposed video, ancient relics. It's just they're just the evidence is mounting more and more every day. Um, but so I hope soon we like we get more. I think that within maybe the next decade or so, I think it'll become a lot more evident if this thing actually does exist out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's of all the things that are out there, it's the most compelling because it's the most consistent over the longest period of time, and you have to wonder if this isn't headed towards a revelation point. Just with all that, the mountains of circumstantial evidence, and kind of like you said, it either is or isn't. And you can cite tens of thousands of reports, but if one is true, then it's either real or it was at some point.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my Jane Goodall or Jane Bigfoot to that kind of person to go out there and live in the woods and try to uh befriend one of these. I think that's probably, I don't know if that's an approach anyone's taken yet,
I
right?
think
Just
you'd go
freaking go
missing
out
with
there and
these
live in the
things.
woods and see what comes.
I think you'd go missing with these things.
What's
There's I think there's a reason that we don't have
That's
that
true.
we are the only uh, upright hominins that we know of scientifically. A lot of reports, probably about 65%, and a lot of the rest are just shock or, oh, I saw across a road. So, like, you don't get warm feelings from people that actually see these things. There's usually reports of dread beforehand, just something didn't feel right, something was telling me to get out, turn around, and 50 feet away, there it is, just staring at me. Something. So I don't. This isn't like a call or like an excuse to wipe them out or anything if they are real. But if what most stories that I've heard and read um, are true, I don't know how cuddly they are. But I do agree with your general sentiment though that someone's got to go out there that's credible and put it to rest once and for all. I just don't know if the Jane Goodall approach would be good for your health personally.
Yeah, it wasn't good for that guy and his girlfriend who went to go live with bears. I don't know if anyone's listened to that audio tape of him getting ripped alive. That's horrible. So, but I mean, science requires sacrifices. And I think there will be an individual, but maybe not, like, especially with the upcoming times and restrictions we've seen on society. I mean, like, I think of it in terms of myself, right? If I became motivated enough to go out and try to document this phenomenon myself, what would I have to go, deal with, right? I mean, I can't just walk into a national forest and just start living there, right? There's rules and regulations that I'm not even familiar with. A lot of red tape. I was considering walking the Pacific Crest Trail. Well, probably not anymore. I mean, a 9-hour car drive just destroyed my back. That was 2 days ago. But I mean, like when I was investigating into looking into it, you got to get permits and and stuff like that. And I mean, I just don't know, but what I do know is that there's a lot of red tape, and it's a huge deterrent for not only individuals like myself, but I think for other people who would actually go off and investigate these things. But like I said, I'm not too familiar with the formalities of living out in the
Yeah, I mean,
woods.
it'd be an interesting project. I'm not going to do it just because, like I said, the majority of what I've heard, if it's not shock, it's sheer terror and dread. I mean, no matter what the thing is doing, it's just something visceral Which makes you wonder, like, if there's like a
Yeah.
like how humans have an inborn fear of snakes and birds. It just makes you wonder if there's like that's another thing that's kind of because that's consistent over time, space. If there was a time where we were a lot more in contact with these things and it didn't end up well, because it's just everything I've heard, they're not a pleasure to be around. I mean, they're fun to talk about, but no one who will sign an affidavit saying I saw them. I think 1 out of 10 would say I want to see another one. But yeah, someone should do it.
That's actually that's a really interesting theory, right? Like here, I'm going for the altruistic approach. Maybe we just, because we have, ET was talking about how they gift and stuff like that, flowers or whatnot. But like, what if we do have a truly innate fear of them? What if we, because just like the Neanderthals, we essentially wiped them out as well. I don't know, we don't know why, but most, I guess, the consensus is that they were a threat or to us or humanity, or maybe we're just evil people that like to kill things. I don't know. I don't like to believe that. But what if there was a war between these? I mean, we've have like lots of legends all over the world of people killing a race of giants. They were humanoids and well proportioned to all the accounts. However, these things are pretty freaking scary, right? Like, I mean, like there's a picture that was posted by Sir Galahad. It's just an artistic rendition, but I mean, it's a scary fact. Like you put a gorilla and a man together, and you have that 9-foot thing charging at you. I mean, we were talking about this in the VC earlier, I think yesterday, at about a gorilla. If you just stand your ground when it comes charging at you, it will leave you alone. Well, that's the theory at least, but it's when you show fear or turn your back is when it rips you to shreds. So, I mean, I don't know, like if the stand your ground theory would work with Bigfoot, maybe he would just rip your head and your spine right out of your body. But, um, it's just maybe that's the approach. I don't know, but it's someone's got to do it, and it's got to be documented too. Like, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I want Bigfoot to be good. I want him to be real. I want a Bigfoot friend. Henry. Like, I love the show Henry and the Hendersons. Henry was actually my profile pic for like years. So because he's got this one pic. It's actually, but anyways, yeah, man. I just hope that with more mounting evidence here in the future, that it will become, more of it. And even though there's shows out there like on History Channel that, show humans doing dumb shit in the woods, it still helps spark curiosity. And, maybe that Jane Goodall is, actually at home right now, a 13-year-old, planning his grand adventure when he comes of age or something. I don't know. But I can only hope.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought experiment, and someone's gonna put it to rest one of these days. Just I can tell you, it won't be me. Give me a platoon of Marines,
Yeah.
and I still wouldn't do it.
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, that's yeah, I don't know. But is there anybody else that have any more questions or statements or facts or truths about Sasquatch
I mean,
and
I
all of
still
his
haven't done
cousins
my
around the world?
sorry to disappoint segment yet. I don't know.
No,
I mean, it
please
just seems
disappoint
like
us.
a lot of this can be easily dismissed as either mistaken identification, outright hoaxes. And I think if we were truly to say that there is another homonym or great ape living out there from a previous geologic time, I think we need more hard evidence.
Oh, that definitely need more hard evidence. I question how much is mistaken identity. That's definitely a thing. Hoaxes are definitely a thing, but I don't know, just the consistency of everyone's saying it's not a bear. A lot of them, it's like rural people, so it's like you're not going to see this walking Michigan Avenue. So these are people that are familiar with wildlife in the area, and they say this is nothing I've ever seen before, and I had a visceral reaction. And like one guy's a Native American in Washington, and you go, oh well, uh, that's your tribe story. Another guy in Pennsylvania, another guy in Florida man. There you go. Georgia, Saskatchewan, Borneo, our troops in Vietnam. Mark Felton, who doesn't really, he's a historian. I'll have to post his video too. Did a thing on the rock apes, which I'll post in general chat. I don't know. I don't think that you can. We do need hard evidence. What I find it intriguing. I don't think any of that proves it because again, you need a body on a slab.
But
But I
we got
also don't
a
think all
massive.
those people for all that time are lying, and I don't think pareidolia or swamp gas or bears with short ears walking upright or I don't. It's the volume is what gets me. If it was like just a
It is the
wild man
volume.
story that came up every once in a while, then it'd be kind of like in Europe, the European tales of wild. It's like okay, well that kind of splotchy, inconsistent distribution of people seeing kind of something. That lines up with just people telling stories, but just the volume of it is again, it's not proof. We do need hard evidence, but it leads you in the direction to where okay, I'll look.
I completely agree. The volume of evidence, and it should not be dismissed. Like for instance, if you look at UFO phenomena, and I don't know what you do in your time, but I've spent my entire adult life and into my childhood studying it, and there's no way anyone's ever going to tell me that all of these sightings of strange things were all just like, you know, something that could be written off as to be something like a simple, what's that word? Mundane. Like nowadays, everyone's like, it's a drone. Okay, well, about back in the 70s, before everyone even barely conceived of the idea of a drone, these things were just happening, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them. It's the same thing with the Sasquatch thing, man. It's just like there's too many people. Like what Sir Price said, the sheer volume of reports speaks incredibly loud, in my opinion. I mean, like people sometimes liken it to like in the court of law, one person can have one person convicted of murder based off one eyewitness. Okay, what about millions of eyewitnesses? You know.
Well, and like even with the UFOs, it's that's a different topic, so I won't jump into that. But uh, the cross cultural and over centuries is another thing. Because if there's thousands of people saying something, but they started in like 1932, then it's kind of like well, something's going on here. But yeah, that's kind of like red flags. But it's just the over time as well, consistency over time. The behavior hasn't changed. What people are saying hasn't really changed.
I
It's a
agree.
Choctaw legend or a 1858 newspaper item from some guy who's or a 1912 newspaper item from some dude in Ohio who said he saw some ants. And then of course, to belabor the point, overseas as well. So I mean, it's something to. I'm a sympathetic skeptic because of that breadth and just consistency, evidence, and then of course there's the inconclusive stuff. We haven't even gotten into air samples or footprints because I think if you're going to bring up physical evidence, you might as well go all or nothing. So we do need a body.
Oh
But
damn, yeah. We could go
the
hours. We could go
witnesses.
hours. I would stick around to hear that for sure.
Well, I mean, like in terms of like not us being, going on forever, but in terms of like if you're going to debate physical evidence, it's kind of like you need a body. So talking about footprints, talking about hair samples, talking about scat, it's kind of like for the birds. So I just stick with the legends and accounts of what people are saying over time.
Right.
The physical evidence is kind of I still think that's lacking. So I don't know if there's much to say.
I think eyewitness evidence is actually probably one of the most strongest points. Now that you mention that.
There's a reason why eyewitness testimony in any circumstance has a tough history in court because eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable.
Well, agreed, and that's why I pointed to the breadth of it. I'm not taking any one person's word, any one tribe's word, any one particular locale's word for it. At a certain point, um, I mean, it's possible that there's like a brotherhood of pranksters, forests of East Asia and North America that have just been fucking with people all this time, and it's possible that there's something we don't know about in the air in forested environments on either side of Pacific Rim that causes people to see this.
I highly
But
doubt
then we
that,
we get
though.
into more of a stretch over, once it proliferates like that is a bit more of a stretch than just saying, well, Bill said he saw it, so then now it's true. Well, that's obviously that's not in this court. But again, over time, thousands of people over literally thousands of years. That makes it a little better than just well, my cousin saw it. Well, who else saw it? Well, this is the first time this has been reported, but my cousin's in on it. And it's kind of like, no offense to your cousin, but that's not enough. But when you have it, Nova Scotia to Burma over centuries, it's kind of.
No shit. Hard to deny.
I mean,
Yeah,
you can still deny it because again, we need the physical evidence, but it's not as easily dismissed as any one court, one or two or five people's word.
I just compare it a lot to crop circles, and I was huge into crop circles when I was like 13 to 15 years old.
Let's talk about
Just
that.
because just because of the. I mean, I don't want to get off tangent because this is Bigfoot, but there's definitely similarities of the amount of evidence, the prevalence of hoaxes, the prevalence of mistaken identification, and I just see too many similarities of yes, there's lots of evidence, but is the quality of the evidence? How do you rate that?
I would actually admit that the quality of evidence is really low relative to lots of other studies. That doesn't mean I don't believe in the Sasquatch phenomena, but I think like it somehow escapes the realm of scientific study. I don't know how, but that's what I've found. Call me ignorant, but that's what I've seen. Um, like we have very shoddy video and photographic evidence, right? Like aside from the Patty film, which a lot of people think is fake. What else do we have? Like we're gonna talk about video and photography and videography. We don't really have a whole lot. And then other than that, I don't know. We got hair samples, which lots of people think is like dogs or deers or bears or something. Um, Footprints, which lots of people think are fake. I don't know. What do we have?
Well, and that's the thing. It's like it's a closed loop, so it doesn't exist. So we're not going to look for it. And I just kind of like, I know I wouldn't risk my reputation because it's fun to talk about. I'm sympathetic because even unlike, what Richard Dawson just said about crop circles, I mean, that doesn't have the breadth and the history of sightings across multiple cultures that this thing. So I think it's an interesting thing to talk about, but I wouldn't risk my reputation on it. So what scientist is going to do that either?
I don't
So
have
it's like
anything to
you're
lose.
not gonna find anything that you don't look for, and you're not gonna look for something. If there's
Well,
anything.
not only that, like I mean, me personally, I don't have anything to lose, so I'll do or look at anything and publish it, and I don't have anything to lose. I don't have a career on the line, but I still can't find anything. I mean, I can find a lot of stuff. I don't know what I should share with people, I guess I should say. You have to be very careful.
We've got one guy on the round table who's already mobile. We should ask OpenEye to investigate for us.
Yeah, that. Tell him to go look at the Rougarou, which is the Cajun name for this thing. He'd be fucking hog wild. No, no. No. Well, if he wants, who cares? But I'm not gonna ask him to do it.
Well, so I believe we're wrapping up the point here. I would like to ask everybody if there's any last closing statements they would like to make on Bigfoot.
Interesting topic, given
Speak now, or I'm sorry.
the circumstantial evidence definitely needs a body, but we're finding new creatures, large and small, all the time. So, before the century's out, who knows what'll happen.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I implore people, just to keep an eye out. Just if you're interested in this kind of thing, I think there's going to be more and new stuff that's coming. That's going to come to light. So I want to thank our live audience for joining our podcast. I want to thank the people who watch our Twitch stream. You can check us out on YouTube, the Roundtable Discord. If you'd like to join our server, just Google the Roundtable Discord. We're also on Instagram. Yeah, we would love to have you. Come join our voice chat. Give us your opinion. We want to know about what you know. And on that, I believe we're going to close this. So thank you for watching. And could everybody just jump up to Roundtable 1?